Hi there. My name is Jennifer Dixon with Thrive Yoga and Wellness. And today we are going to have a super quick practice that is going to be dedicated to all of my friends over at the Golf Strategy Academy, led by the awesome Marty Griffith. We are going to be working on some mobility here for our torso, our trunk, and as well as our shoulders and chest, which will hopefully help improve your golf game. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to get started in yoga, what's called a child's pose. So we're going to want to put either our toes onto the mat or the tops of our feet onto the mat, and go ahead and leave your knees close together and sit your heels back towards your hips back towards your heels. Now, if this is too much, if you can't bring your bottom that close to your heels and your bottom stays up higher like that, that's totally okay because you're still getting mobility in the hips and in the knees. We're going to have our hands outstretched as far as you can. And again, we're working to have the bottoms towards the heels, but if it's more up in the air, that's okay. And we want to have the hands stretching out as far away as they can be while still having the bottoms towards the heels. Now, you're going to feel a good stretch along the shoulders and your lats, I hope. Go ahead, if you can, bring your forehead down to the ground. That's going to disengage your upper trapezius muscles. Those are the triangles basically that connect the top of the neck to the top of the shoulders. Sometimes when they get overfired, they can limit your range of motion across your shoulders. So we're trying to disengage those by pressing that forehead down to the ground. We'll stay here for another couple of breaths, remembering to try to breathe, especially where you may feel some tension. We want to send that breath where it may be tight. And don't forget, if your bottom isn't that close to your heels, if you're a little bit further up like that, that's okay. And if you have some discomfort under your knees, right here, kind of between the backs of your legs and your calves, you can grab either some rolled up socks and put them there behind the knees, or a blanket, just something to help support that area. Now we are going to move up here into a tabletop position. Have your hands underneath your shoulders, your knees underneath your hips, and try to have your back straight. This is going to make your belly engage just a little bit, which helps to support the stability of those hips. We have to have really stable hips in order to have good balance, right? So we're going to keep all of the weight here in the hands and in that left knee and shoot that right leg back. This is called a spinal balance move, and it's really great to help build strength and stability in this core and the trunk hip region, but it also helps to check in to make sure your entire trunk is working together, because when you lift that right leg up, you may notice your hips get sort of cattywampus and your shoulders get cattywampus. Try really hard to keep everything square. That right foot is extending back, pressing into the imaginary wall behind you. We're going to hold this here for a couple of more breaths so that you can experience the muscles really fired up here in the core and along the hips. Try to keep your shoulders stacked and that belly engaged. Go ahead and bring that right foot back down to the ground. So now your right knee is stacked directly underneath your right hip. We're going to shoot that left leg back. And if you want, sometimes it can be kind of hard to visualize if you're not in front of a mirror. You can take your right hand back to bring it to your hips as you raise that left foot to make sure your left hip doesn't raise up above the right hip. This is a lot of core strength to help to keep those hips stable. And you have to have that hip stability and core strength to really have good balance and power that can move from your feet all the way up through your torso into your hands. With your shoulders staying square, we'll hold this for one more minute. No, I'm just kidding, not a minute, a breath. Now, set those knees down, and let's move through what we call in yoga a cat-cow. Drop the belly, looking up. You'll stretch across the front side of your belly and your body all the way up, maybe through your sternum. Then you're going to round through the spine like you're trying to be a Halloween cat, looking down at your belly button. Do this several times. Maybe you move fairly quickly. Maybe you move a little slower with your breath, and you're just trying to get movement along the entire spine.
Now we're going to come back to stillness in this neutral tabletop, and we're going to start to make little C's. You're going to feel stretches along the outer part of the C. So take your right shoulder towards your right hip, trying to keep everything in line. You'll feel a nice stretch along the upper part of your left hip. Come back to center, and then do that on the other side. Left shoulder to left hip. Stretching it out. You should feel a nice stretch along this right side of your body. Coming back to center. 2 more. Right hip to right shoulder. Center. Left hip to left shoulder. Center. Let's do that 1 more. Center. Left to the left. Coming back to center. Very good job. Now what we're going to do is coming back through that child's pose just for a moment. And let's work a little bit more of mobility in that lower back and the sides, the obliques. So take your hands over towards the right, and you're going to feel an even deeper stretch now from basically the top of your left hip, maybe even all the way up through the outer part of your left arm into your triceps. So you should feel this in your shoulders and your lats, the entire back part of your left side body. And if your hips are not as low as mine, if your bottom's not as close to your heels, if you're a little bit higher up like that, that's okay. You still get that same stretch along the torso. This helps to improve our range of motion as we twist. Let's come back to center and take that over towards the left. Now, if your hips are low enough, you can bring your forehead down to the ground to disengage the upper traps like we did at the beginning of the video. But if you're a little bit too high, that's okay too. You're still getting this fantastic stretch along the outer edge, basically from the top of this right hip all the way through the right side of your body, through those right shoulders. Again, this will help to improve your range of motion through your twists. Now let's come back to center and come through tabletop. That's those hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. Plug your toes into the mat, and then basically just shift your bottom towards the ground, towards the sky. Come to your very first downward facing dog. Downward facing dog, believe it or not, is considered a resting pose. When you're very new, you're probably laughing at that. So your feet are about hips width distance apart, and if you want, you can make them wider, or you can make them more narrow. Eventually, trust me, your legs will get straight, but if they're really bent right now, that is okay too. That's just tightness along the hamstrings and probably the low back. But if you continue to practice these stretches, your legs will start to lengthen out here in this downward facing dog. You want to have your belly in, nice and engaged, and you want to have your hands about shoulders width distance apart, remembering to press in with your thumb and your pointer finger a lot. This is the hardest part of down dog, I think, and that is trying to get those shoulders to relax and come away from the ears. So you push the ground away from you a little bit more to get those shoulders away from the ears so that you can relax the neck down just a little bit more. This should feel like a pretty good stretch along the back part of your legs. Your belly should be working, and you may even feel a nice stretch along the upper back. Now what we're going to do is shimmy that left foot a little closer to the right. Go ahead and bring that right knee and right foot close to those right hands. So we're kind of coming into a lunging position. Drop that left knee down and lean into the right knee. So we're trying to stretch out the front part of that left hip. Remembering your ability to twist has a lot to do with how tight your hips are. So if you can't get down this low, that's okay. If your bottom's up a little higher, that's okay. I promise with time, this left hip flexor will release. Keep breathing here. And as always, try to keep your belly muscles engaged. In yoga, we call that Uddiyana Bandha. That's your transverse abdominals. But we don't have to use big words like that here for this video. Just try to think about bringing that belly button in to support the spine a little bit. Now we're going to make this a twist. Bring that left hand all the way down to the mat where your whole palm is flat on the ground. It can be a little forward of the right foot if you want to, or it can be in line. We're going to take the right hand and put it onto your right thigh and help to twist your torso open towards the right. Now, if this is too much, then you just stay right here. Try not to lock out that left elbow. So go ahead and look at that left arm and maybe soften the elbow a bit. If you want to deepen this twist a little bit, you can reach that right arm up high. But remember, we don't want to have the shoulders close to the ears. We want to relax those shoulders down and away from the ears. Now, if you have even more mobility, or if you are looking for a deeper stretch, internally rotate that right shoulder. Take the back palm part of your palm towards your back body. What that does is it helps to make the upper trap not fire up. It pulls the shoulders down and away from the ears, and it allows your chest to stretch a little bit more. It'll also help to intensify this twist. Now, your right knee is going to want to pop out towards the right. Try to hold it in towards your body a little bit for this stretch. Go ahead, bring that right hand down to the mat. Shimmy that right foot over towards the right just a little bit, and stretch out this left hip flexor a little bit more, just for a couple of more moments. And then we're going to shift that right foot back to the back of the mat. And let's move through a couple of rounds of cat-cow, because your hips may really want a break. So you'll drop the belly looking up like we're being our cows, and then round through the spine like that Halloween cat. And then we're going to press those hands into the mat just like we did before. Plug those toes into the mat, and let's go back to our downward facing dog. Remember, your heels are working towards the ground, but if they're up high and you're like up more on your tippy toes and your knees are bent, that's okay too. We're working on mobility in the back part of your body, so those hamstrings, calves, and low back. And this twist with this lunge will definitely help. So now we're going to bring the left knee and the left foot forward to be kind of beside that left hand. Take that right knee down to the mat and enjoy this stretch by helping to sink those hips closer to the ground. So your hips may stay up really high like this, and that's totally okay. We're working towards a good stretch in the right hip flexor. Another fun thing about stretching equally on both sides is you get to notice which side's a little tighter. And if you start to practice a little bit on your own, you'll spend a little bit more time on the side that's tighter. So this is my tighter side, so I try to stretch this side a little bit longer, for example. Always remembering to keep that low belly in to help protect the spine. When your transverse abdominals are engaged, that's the deeper core muscles, that can really help to protect your back. It can take up to 40% of the pressure off of your low back, which who doesn't want that, right? We all want to have a freer, easier moving spine. And so one trick is to just strengthen those transverse abdominal muscles. Now we're going to go into that twist just like we did on the other side. So take that right hand. Maybe it's in front of the left foot. Maybe it's in line. It really depends on your own anatomy. And then we're going to take the left hand to the left thigh, keeping the hips pressing towards the ground as we twist the upper torso towards the left. We want to keep the left knee closer to the chest, at least for this stretch. Check in with that right elbow and try not to lock the elbow. See, a locked elbow disengages your bicep and tricep muscles, and it puts a lot of force and pressure on those joints. We want to make sure those muscles do the work, not the joints. If you want, you look up, but that can be sort of wonky in your neck, so you can look down too. Now remember, if you have a little bit more mobility in that upper back and the torso, you can bring the left hand towards the sky. That just helps to deepen the twist just a little bit more. Now, if you'd like to have the chest stretch, you'll internally rotate that left shoulder, take the back part of your left palm to the back part of your body, and you'll hang out here. What this does is it helps to intensify the twist a little bit more, but it also helps to stretch out the pecs, the front of your body, the front of your chest, and it helps to get these upper traps to relax some. We're going to unwind those hands if you joined me in that particular position and come back to this low lunge. All right, shift the hips back, bring that left knee back, and maybe let's move through a couple more rounds of cat-cow. So drop the belly, look up, round through the spine, look down. One more. Drop the belly, looking up, round through the spine, looking down. From here, we're going to go into a slightly deeper stretch for the hips and the groin. This is called Malasana squat in yoga. You may like this, you may not like it, but it's absolutely phenomenal for opening up your hips. So let's come to your downward facing dog. Plug in those toes into the mat and lifting the hips up. We're going to walk the feet up closer to the hands, toes out, heels in. I'm going to turn and face you. Now you're going to want your feet pretty wide. Eventually you can have your heels directly underneath your hips and sit down with your toes out, bottom towards the ground, knees wide. However, you have to have really open hips to be able to get that low. So if you have tight hips, take your feet out really wide, and then you're going to have to come up a little bit, and maybe you hang out here almost like a sumo squat. Now, unfortunately, this is actually harder than a Malasana squat, but because you're having to use your bottom muscles, right, to help hold you up. But what you can do is use your elbows to help push your inner thighs apart. You should feel this a lot along the groin, the inner thighs, and if you're up this high, you're also going to be working in your bottom. Try to keep the shoulders from creeping up to your neck. So that's not so awesome. It's hard to relax that way, right? So press the elbows into the thighs to get the shoulders away from the ears. Good job. We're going to hold this here for another 3 counts. 2, 1. Now straighten the legs. Go ahead and lift the hips up into the air. Leave the toes pointed out and the heels in, and just enjoy this nice stretch along the hamstrings. Now I'm going to turn away from you, and what we're going to do is slowly start to roll up. We're going to turn those toes to where they're now parallel to each other. Those feet are parallel. Maybe shimmy those feet a little bit closer to each other. Bend the knees a whole bunch and slowly start to round up. Take your time, and if you feel a spot that feels a little more crunchy than the other, then just take your time as you move through it and breathe through that tight spot. Now we're going to work on a little bit of dynamic stretching that's going to include some twist and upper body stretching. So go ahead and shimmy that right foot a little bit closer to the center of the mat, and then we're going to take that left foot to the back of the mat and come into a high lunge. So before we were in a low lunge, right? We're going to bring our hands out in front. So pretend you had a stick across your biceps. So we want to keep those hands nice and even and parallel to the ground. Keep your belly nice and engaged so that you stand up tall. It's really easy to round or to stick the bottom out. We don't want to do that. So if that back knee is bent, that's okay. We would rather have a bent back knee with a strong, tall spine. We're going to take the hands out towards the right, twisting only as much as you can keep your hands and arms in the same plane. If you have a stick or like a little pole, you can always do that to keep your shoulders and your arms even. But if you don't, you just kind of eyeball it. You should feel a nice stretch along the left leg, the front of the left leg, as well as the left side of your body. We're going to come back to center. This is going to be easier. Go over towards the to the left, excuse me. Try to keep your arms in line and shoulders where if you had a stick, that it would not be falling off. Try to keep that right knee bent. I know it's hard, but we have to build some muscles in that right leg. Keep the belly in. Let's come back to center. Now we're going to do a little bit dynamic movement. So we're going to take the hands back, keeping them in line as you bring your torso forward. Keep breathing in the belly in. We're going to work balance really fast as we bring that left foot coming towards the front of the mat and then swing yourself up to a standing position. Let's do that on the other side. A nice and gentle twist with balance and strength. So take that right foot to the back of the mat as we lift our hands up to be parallel to the mat. Keep the chest and hips square. Left knee is bent. And remember, we have like an imaginary stick across our biceps as we try to turn towards the left. We want to keep everything even, right? So turn your body towards the left. Feel the stretch along the outer part of that right thigh as it's helping to twist your entire body towards the left. So you should feel a stretch along the entire left side of your body. Coming back to center, and let's go over towards the left. So if you notice, my chest is still proud, my belly is still in, the shoulders are down and away from the ears, and the arms are on the same plane. This is just helping to build the mobility along the torso. Let's come back to center. We're going to try to make that one small dynamic movement as we bring our chest towards the thighs, keeping the arms together. Suck the belly in a whole bunch, and with that bent left knee, come forward to the top of the mat and then straightening up. This is called mountain pose, standing up tall. Now we're going to stretch the outer part of those hips. I'm going to face you. You're going to ground down a whole bunch through that right foot. We're going to take that left leg and cross it over the right leg. This is called a standing figure 4 pose. You should feel a really good stretch along the outer part of your left butt cheek, right? Your left glute. Now, if this is enough, this is where you stay. If you want to make this a little more difficult, you can bend the right knee a little bit. Now, this is challenging for the balance, but I know that you guys want to work on your balance. If this is too much on the balance, if you can't hang out here on one leg as you bend the right knee, that's okay. You can come to the wall, make sure you're close by to the wall, and you just hold on to the wall as you bend into that right knee. The bending can sometimes help intensify the stretch on the outer part of your left butt cheek, kind of called your piriformis. Not sure if there's any anatomy nerds watching today. You can bring your hands to your heart like in a prayer position. All that really does physically is it helps to bring all of your energy, all of your weight towards the center to make it easier to balance. And now for those of you that are really, really mobile, you can also forward fold and bring your hands towards the ground. Keeping that knee bent and playing with how bent that it needs to be will help to stretch the outer part of that left butt cheek and left thigh in different ways. So a straight leg is fine too, but I like to explore the bent leg option and bending it deeper and deeper to see where the stretch needs to happen. If you do fold forward, be very mindful of that left knee. Make sure the left foot stays very active, like you're pressing it into the ground to help protect the left knee. Now, if you forward folded, we're going to roll up. That uses your glute muscle to help you balance. If you're holding on to the wall, ground that left foot down, take it out and shimmy it out. Your right leg should be talking to you. Let's go ahead and do that on the other side. So we're going to take that right foot and cross it over the left. And we can stay right here. A lot of times this is really tight, this hip flexor part of your leg. So that's totally fine if you just hang out right here. Remember, if balance is an issue, you hold on to the wall and you get into it this way, making sure you hold on to the wall. A secret for balance is that deep transverse abdominal muscle engagement. So keep that belly engaged, and that's also going to help. We're going to play with bending that left knee to see where the stretch needs to happen. You should feel this along the outer part of your right butt cheek, and you may feel it going down your right leg as well. It just really depends on how tight your IT band is. And remember, if you want, you can fold forward. I love the forward fold action because it really helps me to play with where the stretch needs to happen with the bent knee. So bring the belly back to your spine, press down into that big toe if you forward folded, roll yourself up. If you've got hold of the wall, let go of it with the right leg and shake it all out. Now we're going to move into a little bit more of the shoulder, chest, arms opening, stretching, right? So let's go ahead and bring those hands up and overhead and take up some space. You're going to feel a stretch along the front part of your body. Now we're going to forward fold, taking the hands straight down. That actually does move and work different parts of your shoulders. Inhaling to prepare and bend your knees, then plant your hands to the mat with your knees as bent as they need to be. Bring both feet back and your knees down. We're going to go back into this child's pose that we've done a few times. But this time, we're going to play with stretching out the back part of the shoulder blades in between your scapula. So take that right arm out to the right and then thread it under the left. Maybe your right ear comes towards the mat. You should feel this stretching out in between the shoulder blades. And the way that you intensify this is you lift and lower your bottom to find where the stretch needs to happen. You can let that right ear, the right side of your head, come down to the mat to relax the neck. We'll take that right hand, take it all the way out towards the right, maybe stretch it out towards the right, bring in the chest down closer to the mat. You should feel a nice gentle stretch along the front part of your left arm into your bicep and into your pec maybe. Now we're going to take the right hand forward, take the left hand out towards the left just to prepare, then slide it through underneath the right. Again, we're stretching that space behind the scapula. That's like I like to call them your angel wings on your back. Your left knee can be on the mat, not left knee, your left ear. If you can't get your bottom down that low towards your heel and you end up being a little bit higher up, that's okay. I like to play with raising and lowering my hips to figure out where the stretch needs to happen along the back part of my shoulders. You can also play with raising and having it palm up or palm down. That's a different stretch and different muscles of your shoulders. We're going to unwind here. Bring both hands out in front one more time for a good stretch in this child's pose. Then we're going to come back through tabletop and come to a seated position. Now, we're going to have to twist a little bit more to help build some more mobility in that low back. So take the left heel to the outside of your bottom. And if you need to sit up on a bolster to be a little more comfortable, that's okay. We're going to take the right foot and we can have it right in front of the left shin. Or if you've got the mobility in your hips and in your outer thigh, cross that right leg over. Now, use your right hand as a base behind you to help hold you up. And then take your left hand, the left elbow to the outside of that right thigh. Now, this may be enough. So if it is, then just hang out here and breathe. Remember, if you can't breathe, then your muscles aren't going to relax, right? But if you want more, make sure your stomach stays nice and strong, your spine stays really tall, your chest is proud, and then you use your left elbow on the outside of that right thigh, and you maybe think about gazing over the right shoulder. Keep in mind, we want to be as tall as we possibly can be. We want that length in the spine, which will help to translate into length in your spine through all different movements. If you can, you look over that right shoulder, but if that doesn't feel good on your neck, you just look where it feels good on your neck. The most important thing here is that your belly's nice and strong so that your back will relax enough to allow the twist to happen. Let's go ahead and come out of this one. So you gently unwind here. Go really slow. Anytime you leave a twist, you want to leave it slowly. Take that right heel to the outside of that left hip. Take the left hand, the left foot rather, it can stay right here on the inside of the right shin if you don't have that mobility. That's totally okay. Make sure that the left hand grounds you down in the back. So you want to make sure that left hand is behind you to help to protect you and help you to sit up. And we're going to take that left foot, if you can, cross it over the right leg. If you can't, that's okay. You'll just use your right hand to help pull your torso towards the left. But if you can, that left foot is on the mat on the outside of that right knee. Right elbow is to the outside of that left thigh. Remembering your chest is proud, your belly is in, and we try to keep those shoulders down and away from the ears. It's kind of the same principle of when we were practicing earlier and we had the pole across our biceps. So we kind of want to have that same shoulder alignment across the top. Remembering if it doesn't feel good to look out of the left corner, like over those left shoulders, then don't do it. Yoga is always supposed to feel good, so don't go to the point where it doesn't feel good. And always breathe. Let's do this 2 more breaths. All right, here we are into the home stretch. Let's do 1 more stretch for the inner thighs. We're going to bring the feet together and let the knees fall apart. This has a lot of mobility here in the inner thighs. That's going to allow your hips to move a little more freely, like through your swings, and it'll help to also build more mobility in this low back region if we can loosen up the inner thighs. So if you can't get your knees all the way down, that's okay. If your knees are hanging out up in the air, that's okay. Totally okay. The goal is to have the knees resting towards the ground and maybe open up your feet like a book. But if you're up really high like this, then all we do here is breathe. And we hope that one day that these muscles will open up, and they will. Try to sit up tall. But if you're very, very tight in the inner thighs and in the low back, you may be rounding a whole bunch. If you're really, really rounded, I suggest either sitting up on some blankets, some couch cushions, just raising your bottom up just a little bit. That's going to help to let the low back relax, which will let the knees relax as well. So if you have a block, a yoga block, or if you have a couch cushion, go ahead and bring your bottom up higher than your feet, and that'll help to relax the knees, and it might also help you to sit up straighter. If you're feeling really froggy, you can also twist here. So if you're hanging out and you're just hoping and praying that something relaxes, then just stay here and wait for your muscles to relax. If you're a little bit more open and this feels okay, you can take the left hand towards the left knee and twist it out again like we just did with our legs twisted as well. So this is a slightly different type of twist because you're going to feel it a little bit more up here along the upper part of the hip. Remember, those chests are proud, trying to keep the shoulders in line so they're not drooping one or the other. Let's come back to center and do that on the other side. Right hand towards that left knee, and if it can only grab a shin, just grab a shin. Just grab what you can grab. Maybe you can grab the upper part of your left thigh. You're just helping to use it to help gently, I hate using the word torque, but help to gently pull yourself into this twist. Always remember to have your belly button towards your spine to protect the back. And even if your knees are not all the way down to the ground, if they're up higher, you can still do this and still get a good stretch. Coming back to center, and let's do 1 more hamstring stretch. Take those legs out straight in front of you. Now, if your legs don't come all the way straight, that's okay. They can be bent. Totally okay. If they're up really, really, even if they're up like this, that's okay. More important to be able to sit where you can sit comfortably, and then we're going to lean into it. So even if your knees are bent, you can still lean forward, maybe walking your hands closer towards your feet. Eventually your legs will straighten out and you'll be able to fold forward. Try to do it with a rounded spine. That's a little more it's a little nicer for the back. So you can do this even with bent knees, and you'll still get a nice stretch along the low back and into the hammies. And with straight legs, same thing. Eventually you'll be able to grab your toes and help to pull yourself down. But at first, if you've got super tight low back and hamstrings just hanging out here with your knees bent, I like to say a lot of prayers like, oh, help this open up, Lord. One day, these hammies. And before you know it, if you keep doing this several times a week, those hamstrings in your low back will open up. And that will help to improve your range of motion from side to side, as well as up and down. Let's come up to seated. Thank you so much for watching. Typically at the end of a yoga practice, you would come to the mat on your back in what we like to call a shavasana, or final resting pose. If you would like to do that, it really helps to integrate all of these stretches into your body. And in the Western, we call it the parasympathetic, that rest and digest, and the sympathetic, that fight or flight. They get to come back together because you may have wanted to fight me or fly at some point in time during this practice. So if you get the opportunity to lay down on the mat and just rest for several minutes, that would be awesome. But even if you don't, you should feel a difference basically right away in your mobility just by doing those stretches. And the more that you stretch, the more your range of motion will improve. Thank you so much for watching. Again, my name is Jennifer Dixon with Thrive Yoga and Wellness and Thrive Online, and I am so honored to be a part of your community, Marty, and the Golf Academy. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.